Hello and welcome to another episode of the eReads podcast. I am your host, Liz, and this is my podcast where I talk about authorship, books, and all the different parts of the creative process. Now, I have a question for you. Do authors need career tips? Well, my guest, Mark, is going to help us decide if we need to use these career tools outside of that career space and as a solo entrepreneur. He gives us so many thoughtful tips that we can use to boost our careers, boost our network, and to market our books. So I'm really excited for you to listen to this one, and let's jump right into the show where I have a wonderful conversation with Mark about his book and his author experience. So welcome, Mark. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
For having me on the show.
Lovely, lovely. So, Mark, I like to welcome folks by asking them what I call a bookish question. So something about reading or writing. And I thought I would ask you if you can meet any writer, author, we'll say creator, and any type of person in that space, who would you like to meet?
That's a really good question. I'd be tempted to say Socrates or Plato.
Ooh.
Socrates technically didn't write, but his creativity, he was actually against writing, but his creativity was certainly recorded. So I'd probably go with one of those two.
Those are good choices. Really get some philosophy and some life lessons.
Exactly. They set the stage for so much modern authorship and
Yeah.
creativity.
They really did. They really did. But, enough about them. Tell us about you and how you got started on your authorship journey.
I am an unexpected author.
I like
When
that
I
term.
began my career back in the 90s, I graduated MIT. I started out as a software engineer, and I knew I wanted to become a CTO, a chief technology officer. That path required I develop other skills: leadership, networking, negotiating, team building, stuff they never taught me. So I set out to learn it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And as I had this parallel path learning it, MIT asked me to help create a class and teach at a class where we're teaching it now to our students, because we know these skills are for everyone.
Yeah.
And not just MIT students, by the way. Really, everyone out there can all benefit from these skills. So I've been teaching it for over 20 years in parallel to my primary career. Now, I thought we really need to get these out there to more than just our students, because they
Right.
can help everyone. So I'm going to write up some notes, and we can maybe share it with other universities. It will be helpful for our students because they're going to need this years from now. They don't always remember it. And I thought I would write up 20, 30 pages of notes. But it turns out that became 40 and then 80. And then once it passed 100, I said, I don't think I have notes anymore. I think this might be a book.
Just a little bit.
And thus my book was born.
Oh my goodness. I like that term accidental author. Like I talk to so many people and I think that sums it up, right? Like you start off like, oh, I'm just gonna do this little thing. And then you find out like your book finds you, you know what I mean? And so I like that.
Yeah, it was unplanned. And of course, what began as notes had to then get really restructured. I had to think through the whole thing. What really fits in here? What doesn't? And notes for college students, which is how it was intended,
Hmm.
then needed to be adjusted, because now I'm no longer writing just for college students or my engineers. It's a broad book that really applies to any professional at any stage of their career in any type of industry. And so I just had to go through and reword and bring in more examples from different fields and not use terms like students because that would have limited people. So, oh, students, this book isn't for me. But those were minor changes. It was more structuring the book to take this pile of notes and put it in a cohesive organization.
Absolutely. And this is your book, Career Tools, correct?
The Career Toolkit, essential skills for success that no one taught you.
So, this book, tell us more. Who is this for? So, it went from just being students, who is this book for?
It really is broad. And I know one of the standard pieces of advice they give authors is, well, if you write for everyone, you write for no one. But I disagree with that. And people told me, well, you should do the career toolkit for software engineers or the career
Mm,
toolkit for doctors. But really, these are fundamental skills. I have a manuscript of a book for software engineers I wrote years ago. And I realized I was putting some stuff in there that was more universal, but it didn't feel like it fit in the book. And I think that was maybe some of the inspiration that years later helped those notes grow into a book because this covers topics like negotiating, networking, leadership,
mhm,
hiring. These are universal skills, and really any type of white collar worker can benefit from it, as well as entrepreneurs and solopreneurs.
mhm.
And really, I meet people who, well into their 40s, 50s, even 60s, say, I want to get better at negotiating or networking or these skills. So the book really hits a very broad target market.
Well, I'm thinking even like for authors and writers and creatives, right? Negotiating, right? Like critical and like no one teaches you how to do that. Being able to network again, which is often really hard in these spaces where you are solo, right? You're writing a book by yourself and then you're getting it out there. And so can you share, in your opinion, what are some tips from your book that you think would be helpful for writers in terms of whether negotiating or networking?
Absolutely. And I'll note with negotiating, imagine if every contract you sign from now through the rest of your life was 1% better. What
Mm,
type of ROI would that be?
right.
When you consider that, isn't it worth it to read a book, whether it's mine or a different book, or you take
Right.
an online class? The time and money you invest, which for a book is tens of dollars, hours of time for a class, it might be 1,000 or so.
Mhm.
You're going to make that back very quickly.
Absolutely.
When it comes to networking, I'll get to some specific tips in a
Yeah.
moment. When it comes to networking, there was a study of artists that showed the successful artists. Now, this was for, I believe, painters, maybe
Mhm.
other types of artists, not authors, but I think it applies. The most successful were the ones who had the broadest networks. There's
Mm.
countless artists out there. I've never heard of them. You've never heard of them. Why would we look at their stuff? But I know my artist friends. I've gone to their openings. I know the styles. Oh, I like hers. Maybe not so much
Right.
that one. And so they get more exposure because artists are not taking out ads on national TV. So
Right.
our network helps us market.
Wow.
So what can we do? Let's talk about the networking. First, go broad. Yes, you want to know other authors, other people in your field because it helps. You're especially in as an author, you might feel a little alone. So you want
Mhm.
that camaraderie, you want the inspiration, you want to get advice. Hey, how are you using social media? But don't limit yourself to your field. Also get to know people outside of your field. They bring in a diversity to your network, other ideas and opinions. In
Yes.
fact, when I did my book, now I know lots of engineers, but I'm not just writing for engineers. I made sure to have non engineers look at this and point out, you're skewing a little strong this way. You
Mhm.
might need to pull back or broaden it. So you really want that diverse set of people who can give you different ideas and inspire you and influence you, but also can open doors. Maybe some hospital is looking for artwork and you're not going to find out about it unless you know a doctor. And
Correct.
so maybe there's some way you can tie in your writing to some of these other areas.
Absolutely, or even thinking about your characters and being able to be in those environments or getting that lived experience from that person, right? Like you can always Google something, but it's very different from someone who's in the field on that day to day who are going to know some of those minute details. And so that is such a clever point in regards to how to take this book, will say for lack of a better word, that you think might not apply to this creative space and being able to use those skills. um, okay, I'm curious. I'm going to ask you some more. What other skills are in this career book that you think might be useful to authors, writers, creatives?
There's a whole bunch. We'll start with career plans. Now, most
Ooh,
people, I guess from entrepreneurs, they say, well, I don't need a career plan. I'm the CEO of my company. I'm an
wrong.
author. I'm not interviewing for jobs. But in fact, your career plan's not just about your title,
Yeah.
it's about your own personal growth.
Mm.
For employees, there's a title that grows with you. But for those of us who are solopreneurs or doing things on our own, you might say, I need to get better at negotiating. How
Mhm.
do I fit that into my plan? And having a plan about when and how and where will I develop these skills is much better than, well, I want to get better at negotiating. I guess I cross my fingers and hope it magically happens. So career planning does apply even to solopreneurs and creatives like us. The hiring piece, there's a chapter on hiring, maybe less so there. The communication chapter is actually very important because
Yeah.
we talk about how to communicate with different types of people. And especially when you are a creative, you're probably used to thinking a certain way
Right.
about problems and opportunities, but you're going to deal with lawyers and accountants and
Mhm.
marketing people and technologists. They have a different way of thinking, which impacts the communication. How you communicate with them is going
Yes.
to change. So that's important. The two chapters on management also apply. And you might first say, well, I don't have employees. What am I managing? You might not have employees, but you might have a web designer. You might have a marketer. They're not employees, but you're working with them. You
Or even a
manage people,
co-writer.
a co-writer. In fact, I talked about in the management chapter, it's not about you work for me and I tell you what to do.
Right.
We manage our peers at work all
Mhm.
the time. If you have a co-author,
Yeah.
okay, well, there's a bunch of less exciting work that needs to get done. Neither of you wants to do it. How do you, through management or negotiation, work this out with your co author? So, a
Mhm.
lot of these skills really do come back and apply to the things that we do.
Oh my, I love that, and I love how you made it so broad because again, a lot of these different things aren't really like if you go on a job, right? They might teach you how it works in that space, and sometimes that's not very transferable. Or again, if you're kind of not really strong in negotiations, if you're not really in that space, you don't get a chance to build that skill. So I love how you've made this broad, and the skills are very transferable. So that's amazing.
If you think about writing, you might be a science fiction writer and understanding how to literally world build and explain what this planet is like. But there are more fundamental skills like character development and
Mhm.
creating a plot and compelling narrative. And that's going to apply whether you're doing science fiction set on a faraway planet
Mhm.
or you're doing some telenovela program on TV.
Yeah,
They're the fundamentals that apply. And these skills that we've talked about, the networking, the negotiating, leadership, these really apply universally.
absolutely. And Mark, you have another book, don't you, called Brain Dump?
Brain Bump, it's not a book per se, it's an app. Now,
Tell us
I
more.
have views on how media needs to evolve. So, my background, as I mentioned, I have been a CTO, a chief technology officer. I've worked in technology, I've worked in media, I work in education. And I recognize that there is an evolution happening in media. I don't just mean the AI or VR, those are interesting,
Mhm.
but there's something more fundamental. So here's the challenge I saw for nonfiction books, and we can talk
Okay.
about fiction in a moment. You have a book like mine, you say, well, this is great. This is such useful advice, but you're going to forget it 2 weeks after you read it. Happens to
True.
all of us.
Right.
So I want you to be able to remember what you read in the book. both because I care about you remembering, I did this to help you, but also as an author, word of mouth marketing doesn't work when people forget your book. So I
Yep.
want to stay top of mind. And so I recognize that where you read information isn't where you need information.
Right.
So let's think about the two cases where this might apply. We talked about networking.
Mm-hmm.
You sit that, you read that sitting on your couch, but you need it a month later when you're at an event.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be great if you had all that advice right then and there as you walk into that networking event?
Right.
So I created an app that's like a cross between a book summary app, a flashcard app, and a daily affirmation app. It takes the key ideas from a book, also blogs, podcasts, classes, talks. The source is less relevant. If you went through my book with a highlighter, these would be the key ideas. They're all in the app and they are all tagged by topic. So as you walk into that event, you've got the free Brain Bump app on your phone. You open up the app and you go to networking tips. Boom, there they are. Flip, flip, flip. Look it over. Say, okay, right. Yep, I remember all that now. You're ready to go 2 minutes before the event starts. Or
Yeah.
you might say, I'm trying to get better at my leadership skills. You don't always know, oh, wait, I have to lead now. Hold on, time out. Let me pull out the app. But you want to remember it. So you can set up, say, a daily affirmation. Let's say every day at noon, you're going to get, you don't even have to open the app, you get a little push notification, like a daily affirmation, but one of the tips from the book. And this uses
Wow.
spaced repetition to help you stay top of mind, so the content stays top of mind, they remember it, you, the author, stay top of mind. And that's what the Brain Bump app does. It basically puts the information in your reader's pocket so they can pull it when and where they need it. Now, it also has some other cool features, like we have a social share. We know people love sharing quotes. So if I see a quote like, oh, this is great, I want to share it with my friends, I can click share. We've got this nice interface to create a visual, so it has the quote, but also
That is
has
so
the
cool.
cover. So
Yeah.
your branding as an author, they can't share the quote without your branding and your name. And in fact, if the author gave us her or his social media handle, the app user can even tag that person so they can be part of the conversation.
That is so stinking cool. That is really cool. Okay. And even so, I know you said you were gonna kind of get over to the fiction, but even like as a fiction writer, like again, just thinking about that constant branding and um or on the other side when you're creating, being able to have those affirmations and those things that pop up constantly. I love that. And again, going back to, when you write your notes and you need to easily find it. I have a friend that would adore this app.
This is a great app, obviously, for people who want to improve in some way. They read business books, self help books.
Mhm.
It helps them retain the content. And right now, when we're recording this in the spring of 2023, we're having the authors and content creators put their content on the app. We're going to expand that over the summer of 2023. So even if your favorite book or podcast isn't on yet,
Oh,
you can
nice.
add your own notes.
That's so
But
cool.
it comes down to the fact that books are not the end goal.
Mhm.
Books for nonfiction, it's about knowledge and development, and the
Right.
book is the means. So we who create that type of content need to recognize there are other ways we might use the content to engage our audience to deliver value to them.
Right.
Certainly, we know plenty of authors post on social media and do other things, but it's about making our knowledge and experience as useful as possible for our readers, which means moving beyond the page to when and where it's most relevant and helpful to the reader.
Oh, I love that, like moving beyond the page. And again, I know we're primarily talking about nonfiction, but I can see how that even works in the fiction space, right? Really, right? Like when you want someone to put down your book, you want it's something to stay with them, whether it was like the characters or an emotion or whatever. And so, again, that's just a great reminder of like how do you do that? How do you keep that going? So yes.
Let me ask you this. What are some of the all time most popular fiction books out there?
Oh goodness. Um I don't know. I'm thinking like fantasy, definitely romance. Um, oh my goodness. I wonder. Oh,
Let's,
I gotta Google
let's
now and
take a
see what
couple
is it.
examples.
Yeah.
We know, for example, Harry Potter books,
Oh, yeah.
one of the top selling books. Now, Harry Potter, and for a lot of fiction books, world building is a part of it.
Mhm.
Now, we see this a lot in science fiction fantasy,
Mhm.
whether we're talking about Middle Earth or we're talking about fighting the Empire,
Yes.
but we can also see it. Think Downton Abbey, which I believe was a
Yeah.
book before it turned into the TV show.
Mhm.
And it's this world. It's one we can understand a little better. You don't have to explain to me how it worked back then. I have a sense, but
Right.
still, we like this world. We want to be part of it. And
Mhm.
when you get a world people really relate to and characters they relate to, people don't just want to stay in the book.
Right.
What happens with Harry Potter? Well, kids want to dress up like the characters for Halloween. I have friends who play Quidditch. They run around on the field holding a broom in one hand and a ball in the other. Or people have Star Wars action figures. I had some of those as a kid, loved the movie. And then what happened? I wanted to create my own experiences beyond just a linear experience in the book. So, people, when you create a compelling narrative in fiction, people want to go beyond it. Even we'll take Downton Abbey. You
Yeah.
might not have Downton Abbey action figures. I haven't seen that, but people want to go tour it.
Mhm.
People want to have that experience.
Right.
People have in my home city of New York, there's all these like Sex and the City bus tours. Oh, where did they film? People want to engage. So when you create fiction, again, you can go beyond just what's in the book and create a larger experience to engage your audience so they can go deeper into your narrative.
That is really cool. So, can you tell us a little bit more, like if someone is interested in, utilizing your app, how best can they go about starting and, accessing and walking through that process?
Sure. Now, Brain Bump is primarily for nonfiction. We may put out some things for fiction down the road, but for nonfiction, if you are a creator, an author, a podcaster, some type of creator, you can go to our webpage, brainbumpapp.com, and at the bottom of the page, click I think it's apply here or something. It just says, fill out this form. It takes 30 seconds. Give us your name, what you talk about, and we'll get in touch and we can talk about getting your content onto the server so you can engage your audience and you stay stickier with them. You build up your brand reputation and you help your audience. If you are just interested as a user of
Mhm.
the app is completely free on the Android and iPhone store. Apple screwed up the name, so I always direct people to brainbumpapp.com, and you
Okay.
can follow the links there, either the QR codes if you're snapping it from your phone, or you can click the link if you're doing it on your phone, and that will take you to the right place in the store where you can download the free app, and then you start downloading all the free content.
Oh my goodness. Like from the consumer and from I know folks in the nonfiction space, so I would definitely send them your way because I think that is really cool.
It's, I think, the first small step to how we're really going to revolutionize how people engage with content in the future.
Absolutely. And again, especially in that nonfiction space, I mean, there's so many times like I've read a book and like, you do, like you said, you do the highlight, you do the bookmark, but then there's no real way to like keep that knowledge there, and not unless you're making your own sticky cards and things like that. So to be able to have that in a space so that you, like you said, you are growing with the content is amazing. And I can only imagine what y'all would be able to do in the fiction space if that ever comes to be. But definitely, in between your two resources, your career toolkit and your app, I mean, that's very amazing. And again, it just seems so user friendly, right? Again, not something that's hard to adapt to. So, like, well done.
Thank you. Yeah, being accessible for all of our writing and all of our tools, very key for adoption.
Absolutely. And so, Mark, as we kind of come to a close, what are any like last words that you would like to leave folks who maybe they're trying to we'll say manage it all, right? Like there's so many skills that they have to develop, right? Like any words of encouragement on how that they can navigate this journey.
Don't try to do it all yourself. I mentioned I have a background as an engineer, as a CTO. I've done multi-million dollar tech projects, but I didn't do my website. I know my design capabilities are not strong. I know I'm really rusty with HTML, and I hired a designer to do my website because that's not my strength. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather focus my time somewhere else. So definitely leverage people. Now, whether it's you can hire someone, or if you can't, use your network, get that diverse network, because not just other writers, but website designers and doctors and all these other people who can give you advice and guidance. I'll also note that any question you have, someone else has had it. And so if in your direct network you don't have it, look around. You can get from podcasts like this one,
Mm-hmm.
you get from other resources. When I began my journey, I read about 1,500 articles on every aspect of writing to learn because someone else did. And by the
Right.
way, we have a list of the most useful articles at, I'll give you one more website,
Yes.
Cognoscomedia.com. That's a little hard to spell. I didn't think anyone would look at the site when I created it. Cognosco media.com. And if you go to cognoscomedia.com and you go to the resources page, there are links to everything from how do you find an agent to should you self-publish or hybrid publish? How do you come up with a good cover? How do you do a launch party? What
What?
font should you pick? Who thinks about font? But that matters to your book. So it's all there, not my advice, but the best advice I found online. So create a network that's going to provide you resources. And if your network can't help, remember someone out there has seen it. So check articles, check podcasts, check videos, and find the answer.
Oh, fantastic. Right. Again, and thank you for pulling that all together. Because yeah, we've all went on that like tunnel of trying to find the answers. So knowing, listen, there's some resources out there, folks. So, oh, and before I ask you my final question, how can people connect to you, right? What are your websites and things like that?
So there's 3 websites because I have all these multiple brands. For the book, there is the careertoolkitbook.com. And there you can learn more about the book. You can get in touch with me. I have blog posts that extend the writing and a whole bunch of free resources all at the careertoolkitbook.com. For the app, you can go to brainbumpapp.com and there you can follow it to download it free from the stores. Or if you're interested in getting your content on there, at the bottom of that page, there's also a link. There's a 90-second video that shows how the app works. So all of that is at brainbumpapp.com. And I mentioned a third website, cognoscomedia.com, Cognosco media.com. And there is a link at the top called Resources. Click that, and that has links to all the best articles I found and curated to help other authors on their journey. Cognoscomedia.com.
And if y'all missed any of that, it will be in the episode show notes. So please check that out, because these are all fantastic resources that can help not only you, but the people in your network that Mark has mentioned. So amazing. Thank you so much.
Quite welcome.
Mark, thank you so very much. This was so very helpful.
Thank you again for having me on the show.